Leslie Maasdorp, Vice President of the New Development Bank, which funds projects in emerging markets, gave me his key takeaways from this year's event.
What was significant this year, naturally, is the fact that it's for the first time back in person, meaning that for the last 3 years of absence, this is really the first time that people were able to gather physically in a room. There were a few themes that sort of dominated the conversation, I would say. The first one, given the geopolitical context, was really about whether we face the risk of greater fragmentation in the world economy as a consequence of the geopolitical tensions, meaning that could we find more decoupling, signs of decoupling happening, which will have profound negative impacts on the world economy. That, I would say, is one of the big themes. The second major concern was naturally about financial and banking stability because of the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, Credit Suisse, the troubles of Credit Suisse, which led to them being acquired by UBS. Those aspects also dominated, especially from the central bank governors of PBOC, of IGANG, and so on. There was a big focus on that topic. And then thirdly, the climate crisis. Climate always is a major theme at these gatherings because it represents the long-term, more structural sort of underpinnings of this dialogue. So it was a very interesting conversation, to say the least.
Very interesting, and some very heavy subjects on the agenda there, lots to talk about. So you mentioned that the China Development Forum is being held in person for the first time since the pandemic. How much of a difference do you think that made?
It makes a huge difference. As you know, you cannot really replace the in-person, the sort of corridor talk, the meetings that take place one-on-one, and you need that eyeball sort of warmth and emotional touch in order to make progress on some of these more difficult topics. For example, the tensions between the United States and China naturally features very prominently at these sessions. But, you can only talk so much. There's much more is required in terms of, one-on-one conversations with some of these very senior decision makers who can shape public opinion and indeed opinion makers in their respective countries and indeed in their companies, whether it's Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, or any of these big global bankers.
Egypt is becoming a full member of the New Development Bank, the latest of a new intake of members. There's been also the establishment of a permanent headquarters there in Shanghai, where you are. How would you rate the current performance and relevance of the NDB?
New Development Bank, as you know, will be turning 8 this year in July, so it's still a relatively young institution if you compare us to all the other multilateral banks like the World Bank, European Investment Bank, Asia Development Bank, who have existed for 50, 60, and in some cases 70 years. However, the bank has experienced significant growth. I mean, we've been really on quite a significant journey since 2015. Today, the bank has an approved loan book of $33.5 billion, representing more than 80 large infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure projects in very big emerging markets of, Brazil, China, India, Russia, South Africa, and now also Bangladesh, Egypt, and other countries that have joined. What we will see going forward now is the bank continuing on this theme of membership expansion as we become a more global enterprise anchored in the emerging markets.